Welcome to GLIAC Weekly. This is Matt Witwicky. If you don't know me, I'm on our Sunday night show and also a Northern Sun guy, and I'm joined by my GLIAC specialist, my expert, Tony Nicolette. Tony, how are you doing?
I'm doing extremely well, Whit. Glad to be riding alongside with you here. Wish you would use the term expert a little bit more loosely than you have there, but we'll try and live up to it. How's that?
Everyone's completely depending on it. Don't worry, no pressure or anything like that.
I'll
By the
say
way,
it.
for those who don't notice, Tony's got a new addition to the room there, the D2 helmet in the back. I love it. Looks fantastic up there, buddy.
Yeah, a little
Uh,
Matt Darter from Rapid Elite in Maryville, Missouri, helped me out with the decal, and then I got a couple of buddies who do some equipment work who did a little bit of the rest of the fashioning of that. So yeah, no, it's fun to have that. I was glad to have all the help from those folks to be able to put that together.
No doubt about it. I was really glad that, you and I had chatted a little bit in the off season about trying to figure out a way to kind of make this the best version of this it could be. And, whether it's myself stepping in to host, whether maybe we'll have Chuck at times also step on in, whoever is hosting, it's going to be great because of the fact that this is one of the top leagues. Some will say the top league in Division Two, and you know what? We're going to provide it. A great show here. So, Tony, let's go ahead and kind of start on off by taking a little bit of look at some of the new additions. What's changed kind of year to year. Tell me a little bit about the Roosevelt Lakers and kind of the addition they are to the league.
Yeah, so as you know, the GLIAC has, at one point in time, and for those who don't remember, I wrote the GLIAC column for Brandon back in the late aughts and the early teens. And at that point in time, part of the reason that I stopped writing was, I was at a point in my life where my family was starting to take more time and I wanted to
Sure.
devote more energy to that. But part of what was making it hard was the GLIAC had 16 teams playing football in one of those seasons. And so that was a lot of digging and churning to try and put that content together, especially back then we were all still writing. So that's, for those who haven't done that, trust us, it's a time consuming endeavor. So, when things started to shift within the GLIAC and that footprint shrank, that kind of opened the door for me to come back a few years ago, and it's been great. And of course, now as we go more digital, it's making that even easier. But while that's neat for Tony, not so neat for the GLIAC to only have 7 football playing members and only half of your schedule covered by in-conference games every year. So this is one of the things that the league has been working hard to try and do something about is
Right.
find additional members, get that footprint expanded just a little bit, but keep it tidy to the region the way they want to. And Roosevelt was a great fit in that it adds the Chicago market to things, which is really good for the GLIAC. And believe it or
Sure.
not, it actually aids in some travel too. It's a straight shot down through Wisconsin for the UP schools, and so that helps a little bit, especially the guys that are further west, like Tech and Northern. So from a football perspective, those are shorter trips for them. But also for some of the other sports, the Olympic sports in particular, you got Wisconsin Parkside and Purdue Northwest that are in the league. So it just was a nice fit from a geographic standpoint. But then again, having football, that profile really aided in getting another game on the schedule that the current membership didn't have to go back out and find. So getting these guys they're a welcome addition. Now having another Lakers in the league, people can lament that because Lake Superior State is also the Lakers, so that's actually a
Right.
third.
Now, as we take a look, in our image here, we've got a shot of downtown Chicago right there. They combined with Robert Morris of Chicago,
Mhm.
and both teams have been playing at the NAI level, and then all of a sudden kind of came together. And I don't know if you've taken a good hard look, Tony, about where they're at downtown, but they're like blocks from like Millennial Park and stuff
Yeah,
like that. And I
that's
mean,
their
you want to
building
talk about
right there.
downtown.
Yeah, that's their primary building. they're right in the middle of everything. So, I mean, it's actually, I had friends that wanted to go to school in urban campuses. And so, schools like University of Minnesota is right downtown Minneapolis. Pitt is right downtown Pittsburgh. So,
Right.
you can get that urban experience at the D2 level by being able to hit up a place like Roosevelt.
I was with my kids over the summer. You and I had talked. I took them to a Cub game, and we went kind of walking through the city. We walked right past that building because my kids pointed it out.
Nice.
I mean, it's that noticeable when you're there. Now, from my recollection, and correct me if I'm wrong, their home games that they're going to be playing football at, I believe, are about a half hour northwest in Arlington Heights, in the suburbs. Pretty nice northwest suburbs, if my memory serves me right. So if you're visiting, school and your fans, it's going to be your choice. You don't necessarily need to stay in downtown Chicago if you don't want to. You can certainly stay in the North Burbs to go see the game.
Yeah.
But I would imagine some people are going to want to go and kind of get the whole experience, don't you think?
Well, yeah, if you can make a weekend of it, that's certainly something that our family's done plenty of. Being a girl dad, I've had to do the American Girl weekends in downtown Chicago several times. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, being able to do everything that Chicago has to offer, I mean, it's one of the better cities anywhere in our family's opinion. So we've always enjoyed going there. So for sure, you can make a weekend of it. But they are out by the airport too. So for teams that need to come in and get back out, there are plenty of options as far as travel goes. I mean, you really do. You nailed it. You've got the option to make a longer stay of it, or get in and get out if you need to.
Well, me being born and raised in Chicago, my first 25 years, you're not going to get an argument with me about it being a great city. So
Yep.
now, as we move along, got to tell me a little bit more about this mascot, Tony. Help our fans get a better understanding of this before everything gets going.
Now I'm hoping I pronounced this correctly.
Well, you'll pronounce it better than I will.
I believe it's Fala. And Fala is a Scottish Terrier. Now they call her, for he or hit, whatever it is, Fala the Laker. Now people are going to say, okay, what's a Scottish Terrier have to do with the Lakers or anything in Chicago or what have you? Well, the name of the school is Roosevelt, and it was named after President Roosevelt, and his family dog was Fala, and that was a Scottish Terrier. So
there was a whole lot more meat on that bone than I realized. I had no idea.
In honor of that, that's the mascot of the Roosevelt Lakers, the furthest west Lakers of the current GLIAC alignment.
The West, I like that. Now we were kind of referencing a little bit, the geographic footprint. Now we got to kind of take a look at it here. You're right. The Chicago market is a real easy one, all things considered, for the GLIAC, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and it's a good hit too. I mean, and then obviously, we all know that Division II, as far as some of the larger news sources in terms of TV and print media, the old school print media, D2's got to kind of fight for its share, and I'm sure that's not going to be any different in Chicago. But getting any kind of coverage in a media market of that size is something that a lot of D2 conferences can't boast. And so, it's anything that's going to get that name out there and get that recognition and get more eyeballs on what we're doing is great for the kids. It's great for the institutions. And so, to get a school that's right in the heart of a great city like that sure is a get.
Agree. Kind of moving ahead, our GLIAC Media Day. I know you were there. I got a chance to watch a fair amount of it online. I think they do a great job with this media day. Being a guy who's natively, a Northern Sun guy, where we don't have media day, I might be a little bit jealous of this, Tony, or a lot. Because otherwise I kind of have to do WIP Media Day, which means me calling all the coaches. But tell me a little bit about the experience while you were there and kind of how it went.
Yes. Well, I mean, I was in the room where it happened. So there's your Broadway reference for the day. You know what? I loved it because when I first was writing back 15, 16, 18 years ago, we actually did this every year. And in fact, they usually held it over in Bay City or somewhere in that general vicinity where the GLIAC is headquartered. And so to have those in-person events like this was something we just always did.
Sure.
Doing it online and making it a more fan centric or fan participative event was something that was really something that the GLIAC tried to be on the forefront of. But then at the same time, you kind of ended up losing the cachet of being able to get everybody in the room together and have people come in and be able to do interviews and see folks. And I'm one of those old school types too that just loves building relationships. And part of why I've been able to enjoy covering the league so much is because some of the folks that I've been working with, especially SIDs and whatnot, there are some of these guys I've been working with the whole time. since I started writing in 2007. And so
Sure.
to get to see those guys in the room again, some of them I hadn't seen in quite a while, was really fun. So, I was appreciative that the league took the time to do that. But then again, they've taken the extra step then to make it where all that content and all the interviews, or at least the show itself, is something that's for the fans to be able to watch.
Yep.
Because that was one of the things that you just didn't get before. I always got the insight of things because I could see everything that was happening, but they didn't make it available to the fans. So
Sure.
kudos to the league, and John Regenfuss is the media director, relations director for the league. He and his crew do a great job of kind of being able to bridge that gap between the media and the fans.
Yeah, and the GLIAC said a few words about our guy Brandon Meisner at
They
D2,
did.
and I really appreciate them going out of their way to do that. I thought that was a great gesture. Some of the things that are also kind of happening with the league. We've got Flow Sports. I know that they've got a few different packages available now and so forth. And I really think Tony, I'm in a league with the Northern Sun, in my native league where everything's free there, and so is the RMAC. But you know what? Those are kind of some of the last two that are really holding out on this. If the schools are going to be able to make some money back and have some kind of flow back into them, and not to mention, I think Flow, has a nice interface and the ability to go ahead and see things on their site. I think this is kind of here to stay, don't you?
I do. And before we get too far off of the media day, too, I do want to make sure too, that every school, somebody from that school came up and asked me how Brandon was doing. I mean, so
That's great to hear.
it wasn't just that Commissioner Dunbar said something to open things. I mean, I had coaches, I had SIDs, I had a ton of people coming up, and that was the first thing. Tony, how are you? How's Brandon? And so, how's our guy? So
Sure.
they view him the same way that we all do, and so I want to make sure that got out there, because I almost
That's
teared up a couple
fantastic.
of times at how many people actually went out of their way to say something and ask about him. So
That's tremendous.
now, as far as Flow Sports goes, I'm with you. I think that consistency for the fan has been really good. The GLIAC was never something that had like a universal platform. A lot of schools used to do things different ways. Some schools would have a free broadcast for every game. Some of them would have something behind a paywall where you pay a couple of bucks to be able
Sure.
to watch. So there just wasn't any sort of, and of course the level of production was different from school to school. And you may still see a little of that, but at least now everybody's trying to strive towards kind of a bar that's at least set as a minimum, so that if you're going to pay Flow Sports, you're going to get that kind of minimum at the very worst product, in terms of,
Right.
all right, we're going to get a good feed. It's going to be consistent. We should have a couple of camera angles. There should be some replay. We're going to get some commentary over the top of it. Even if it's just the radio broadcast, some of the radio teams in the league are really good and have been at it for a while. So that
Agreed.
they provide really good insight about their teams and quality commentary that way. So I think it's been good for the league. I think there's been some resistance to it. And obviously we've talked about that on Inside D2 Football, and
Sure.
kind of carried the mantle for some of the fans who hate the paywalls. But I think as we've all kind of acclimated to it for the GLIAC, I think it's turned out pretty good.
Yeah, I'm kind of done fighting it at this point. I don't have an issue with it. Um, by the way, the league did a really nice job of coming up with some of these graphics. We kind of compiled them here for what we're looking at. But I thought they did a really nice job with this. And this I take a look at the preseason poll, and before we kind of get into age team and so forth, I normally, when I get a league poll, I normally have a quick look at it, Tony, and I'm unsure. I always have kind of a knee-jerk reaction. Something's a little different than I expected it to be. Did you have anything where you looked at this and you thought, it makes sense to me, and it kind of made you pause for a moment?
No, to be honest with you. I mean, if you really look at it, it's last year's standings basically at the end of the season, with the only caveat being Grand Valley and Ferris State are reversed.
And that was my knee-jerk reaction right there, my friend.
Yeah, but if you look at the vote totals, and Chuck mentioned this on his national show this week, the vote count totals were so neck and neck.
Yep.
that, basically it's probably a fair assessment in that those are two teams that week in and week, or every time they play each other, you kind of still wonder, geez, what's going to happen in this game? And so, let's face it. I mean, that October 26th in Allendale is probably going to have a lot to say about what happens in this league. And so going into that game, if that's going to be one of the primary deciding factors, okay, is it, a breeze or two, one way or the other, that decides which one's over the other one? It could be. So, when I saw that, I didn't think a whole lot of it. And in part because I have seen so many of these preseason polls over the years. And there was a stretch of time, even when Tony Nicolette was first at Ferris and was building things up, that he had gotten the best of Grand Valley a couple of times, and yet Grand Valley was still voted above them in the preseason polls back then. And, any folks who want more than what we're putting together here and want to go take the time on YouTube to watch the video and from that media day, they're going to hear Tony Nicolette and Scott Wooster both say, yeah, okay, the poll's the poll. We don't really care. We got to go win ball games.
Of course.
So I hear what you're saying. But to say that I put a lot of energy into thinking much about it, or was I surprised by it? Nah.
I had, with Grand Valley getting them both times last year, I kind of had them, that being the boost. But you know what? I mean, let's be real frank here. We're talking about two ball clubs that are ranked in the top 5 nationally. And that says a whole heck of a lot right there in itself.
Sure.
So, and as you mentioned, it's not going to end up, it's going to be figured out on the field.
Sure. And when you look at, I guess the only thing that I would say is that maybe some of the folks were taking a look at, okay, Grand Valley loses basically a 4-year starting quarterback who was the GLIAC player of the year. They had the GLIAC offensive and defensive lineman of the year last year. Okay, that's a lot to lose.
Yep.
Maybe. I don't know.
I think the amount of talent that they have is right there at the top of D2. And you know what? I think Ferris State's right there with them.
I don't disagree.
They're the clear-cut ones. But let's go ahead and kind of take a look team by team. We're going to go 8-1. We're going to go ahead and kind of build our way up. And, we mentioned Roosevelt a moment ago. Let's kind of take a little deeper look, not so much at the city of Chicago anymore, but this football team. What do you have to say, my friend?
Are you still having Boss's Pizza nightmares from your eating challenge that's going to make you not want deep dish anytime soon?
No. Anytime we talk about deep dish, I can be easily sidetracked. You already know that. So.
I'm right there with you. So, and I want to make sure too, hey, all the staff that was not only at GLIAC Media Day, but a lot of these guys have taken time with me as a part of my research to get ready for the season and for this show. So I want to make sure and extend a thanks to the SIDs and the coaches who gave me a lot of time and extra information to have a good show and some good content for everybody. So the folks at Roosevelt were as accommodating as anybody else. And so I'm grateful to them for that. So,
well, good. Hopefully they're going to be ready to share all this stuff on the socials too. I like that.
That's right. So, in talking to some folks around that staff, one of the things that, might get overlooked is looked as, okay, yes, they're a program that's transitioning from the NAIA to NCAA D2. That's a challenge in and of itself. But this is actually a program that's more mature than even Davenport is. Jared Williamson's the only coach this program's ever known. And in the 13 seasons he's coached them, they've been 500 or better 10 times. Right. So, I mean, this is a group that, and NAIA ball, has 24 scholarships compared to the 36 here in Division II. So, I mean, they've got kids that are getting money. I mean, this is not just walking in with nothing. So the style of play that they're going to have is going to be at least somewhat aligned to what the Division II has always been in the GLIAC. I think physicality is probably going to be where they're going to have the biggest challenge. And I think some folks in the program would probably agree with my assessment of that. Being able to compete up front on both sides of the ball is probably where they're the most concerned with, okay, what are we going to do to try and make sure that we can, not get run over here as we get going on things. But with that said, you look at what they did last year. I mean, they had a winning record last year. All 4 of their losses came to teams that were ranked either in the NAIA poll or their loss to North Central to open the season. I mean, I think North Central played in the national championship of Division III last year, if memory serves. I know they were a Final Four.
They've been a very good club the last 2 seasons, yes.
Right. So it took good teams to beat them. Now, with that said, they are going to have some holes they've got to fill. Tyler Tenner had over 1,000 yards for them on the ground last year, and so who's going to run the ball? And there's a little bit of question around that. They do have 10 starters back on that side of the ball, so Tenner is really the only one that they're going to miss. Carson Butke was had a decent season for them last year, 19 touchdowns, 12 picks. Threw it a lot to a freshman who had a big season last year in Keontae Nixon. He was at Media Day. So they're looking for him to do big things. He was 21-plus yards per catch last year, so he's an explosive talent there on the outside. They do a lot of 2 tight end sets, and so guys like Jacob Biddle and what else are going to also be key for them. So again, with those 2 tight end sets, can that help with the blocking if they feel like they're a little bit weaker in the trenches than what they're going to need to be? Defensively, I think, because of that lack of physicality, they gave up a lot of big plays. And so I think that's something that they're going to look to try and shore up as they head into this year. They do get their leading tackler back in Jalen Olakun, good linebacker, solid player. They also had an All-American, NAIA All-American at corner, and Joey Mahan or Mahop, excuse me. I think he had 6 interceptions and actually returned a couple of them for touchdowns. So, I mean, they've got some guys, and there's some depth and experience in the DB room and across the defense. But again, I think they just got question marks on, okay, what are we really walking into and how long is it going to take us for us to acclimate? Now they do get a little bit of that break, before the GLIAC schedule starts. They do have a few out of conference games, and they actually start a week later than everybody else too. So they're going to get some extra camp time.
I saw that they don't start till the 14th of September.
Yeah, and they play a unique schedule too, in that they've got, I think, a D3 school, they've got an FCS school, they've got an NAIA school.
They start off
of what they could cobble together before they start GLIAC play.
Well, you bring up a really interesting point. They host Wisconsin Whitewater right out of the gate, and they have been a team that's been very good in D3 over the recent recent days. Valpo. Not a great FCS, but at the same time, that's a step up. Then I did notice their first conference game happens to be against Ferris. Welcome to the league.
Welcome to the league.
But
have fun storming the castle.
Exactly. I'm familiar with them. I've always kind of kept an eye on the NAIA. I'm originally from, going back to the University of Sioux Falls, where they had some big days in the NAIA, and you can see in the picture that you have here, Tony, St. Xavier. St. Xavier is one of the better teams and programs in the NAIA, and I watched them a few years ago. I watched a game on YouTube where Roosevelt lost 21-20 at St. Xavier, and battle till the end, and that's the kind of squad that they're bringing. This is not some team that's coming in here thinking that if we get a win or two, we're going to be happy. I think that they've got some bigger hopes with that. Now they're going to have some challenges, as you and I talked about, coming on into the league just like this, because it's a good sized jump. But it's good to see a squad like this that has been on the cusp of the playoffs in the NAIA in the years leading into this. That's going to be interesting right out of the chute.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be afraid of anybody.
Right.
At least not to start out. They might take a few lumps here or there, but they're definitely coming into this season looking at trying to get a couple of wins at a minimum. And I don't think this. Coach Williamson doesn't strike me as a guy who's really trying to come in this and have this just be a litmus test season. I think he really wants to try and make a splash and see how many people he can raise their eyebrows.
No question. Now let's go ahead in our series of teams that wear green. Next up is Northern Michigan, the Wildcats. Shane Richardson's in his second year at the helm. Now, they were winless a year ago. The big thing that really kind of stands out to me is nearly giving up 50 a game. That's got to be an area that they're going to have marked improvement or are going to need to. Now, they bring back 9 guys on defense. Tell me a little bit about kind of what you found out with this club.
Yeah, and on defense, it all kind of starts and stops with Mitch Larkin in the middle. He had over 130 tackles, I think, last year. I mean, he was third in the country in tackles. So, to be, you know, an underclassman and be that active to where you get that kind of recognition, not only nationally, but I mean, led the league in tackles.
Sure.
And then, you know, he gets Jax Hertel, who's alongside of him, who actually had a bunch of tackles as well. I mean, those are guys who, you know, really were the ones who kind of held it together as much as they could on a defense that, to your point, was giving up a little bit too much. And I think, you know, one of the issues that they had is that they've got some guys that they really like on the defensive front. They just weren't getting a pass rush very often last year. I mean, when you think about how far behind they were, you'd think that teams would be running the ball a lot. So maybe that's part of why they didn't get a lot of sacks. But I mean, I think they only had 10 sacks on the season as a team. So that's the type of thing that you're going to have to do better with if you want to be able to stay in games longer, is get quarterbacks off the dime, get them uncomfortable, get them off the field, get them making mistakes. You know, and so guys like, you know, Jamari Mayberry and Jason Coulter up front are really going to have their work cut out for them to try and get this team over the hump and being a little bit more stout in terms of stopping folks. You know, one of the things that I heard that was really noteworthy to me is just how young this team is. And Coach Richardson's been talking about it during the summer, is that, you know, they brought in a bunch of freshmen in the signing class this year, which isn't all that unusual. You know, you're going to get some turnover, especially with a new coaching staff going through their first couple of seasons and whatnot. But it sounded like they really think that there are a lot of kids in this freshman class. I mean, maybe as many as 7, 8, 9, or 10 that might actually see a fair amount of action as early as this week against Duluth. So, you know, you just don't always see big recruiting classes come in and have a ton of kids start playing right away. But it sounds like they really feel like they can get some good production out of those kids. So keep an eye on Northern and just see how the youth movement moves things along, because that's really what they are. They don't have a ton of seniors on the team. They got a few, but not a ton. All the big production last year came from kids that were freshmen and sophomores. And as they're working their way up that seniority pole, if you will, they'll keep things moving along. And that's even true on offense, right? You know, they had a starter that was a transfer that came in from the East Coast last year, and he got dinged up. And so Aiden Horde, basically as a freshman, got called upon to run the team for most of the second half of the season at quarterback. And, you know, he did a real good job of just kind of holding it together and learning under fire and realizing how much the speed is different of the game, you know, in this league and in D2 in general, or college in general versus high school. I mean, that's a lot to ask an 18-year-old kid to walk in and do it his first season is, here, come in and run the team. So, you know, he's got a couple of his top pass catchers back from last year. You know, Michael Love, Sam Piper, you know, they're the guys that, you know, they didn't generate big numbers, but they're at least reliable pass catchers that they've got. I think the biggest issue that they've got is they just don't have much returning in the way of reliable ball carriers. Most of the top rushers that were there, you know, Tyquan Cox and guys like that, have all departed. So this is a team that offensively is going to have some things to figure out too, in addition to the defense. But, you know, again, if you talk to kids and people within the program, they seem pretty excited about where Richardson's trying to take things in terms of culture. So, you know, we'll see if it translates on the field.
Absolutely. Next up, we've got the Wayne State Warriors. Ty Wheatley in his second season as well, 3-8 in his last campaign. As you take a look at, you know, some of the kind of the measurables that we have here, another team that, you know, obviously is giving up a little bit too many. That 17 points per game offensively is probably something I was a little more concerned with when I first saw it. They're not bringing back a ton here, Tony. We've got 4 guys coming back on offense, 3 on defense. How do you see this one?
Yeah, we talked about how young Northern is, and this is thematic here with these green teams, is that they've got a lot of youth in the GLIAC. You know, when I was talking to some folks around the program, one of the things that they mentioned was, gosh, the only 3-year letter winner that we have on the roster is our kicker. You know, and so, you know, now Griffin Milovansky is an excellent kicker. He was first team all GLIAC last year. I mean, so at least he's good. But I mean, that just tells you how much turnover there's been, just as the coaching staff starts to mold things into what type of kids they want to have over the long haul. And, you know, it's just a youth movement there. There are going to be a lot of things that this team's going to have to figure out as they go through this season. You know, in terms of just even in the quarterback room, only 2 guys are back from the roster last year. Justin Cox, I think he started a couple of games for them. They kept his game participation down so they didn't burn his year, but he did play quite a bit. And like I said, I think he started at least 2 games. So he's at least gotten some snaps and some reps. But, I mean, outside of that, pretty much the whole quarterback room is brand new. So, I mean, who's going to lead that offense is something that Coach Wheatley's going to have to figure out. DeMarco Singleton did a fair amount on the ground for them, but he was only like their third leading rusher, I think. And so he's the most prolific rusher that they've got back, and he caught a few balls for him too. So he's a good multi-purpose guy. But outside of that, there is a lot of question marks that Wayne is just going to have to try and figure out. Gosh, how are we going to address these things? How are we going to move the ball, and who's going to do it? So, yeah, I mean, that's a tough road to hoe for that group.
And also, you got some really tough out of conference games here. I mean,
oh my gosh,
at Tiffin, Findlay, who's picked to win their league, Indianapolis, who's picked to win their league. I mean, that's it's going to help their strength of schedule, but they're also hurts the chance of notching more W's, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And so, statistically, I'm pretty sure Wayne's strength of schedule last year in terms of opponent win percentage was the most difficult in the country. And based on who they've got this year, because a lot of those are repeat teams. They played Indianapolis and Truman last year. And so you're going to see something very similar this year. But the funny thing is if you look at their what they did on the field last year, you could kind of wonder if they don't have a little bit of more hope and a little bit more of a gleam in their eye than maybe we're giving them credit for. Because, I mean, they won 3 games. They were actually in that game against Slippery Rock for at least chunks of it to open the season.
I was watching that. Yeah.
Right? They knock off Tech, who was a 500 team. They took Saginaw Valley to overtime. I mean, so it's like this is a team that actually was in a lot more games than a 3-win, tally might indicate. So,
right.
You got to feel like maybe they were close. But giving up big plays and stuff and a lot of yardage as the season wore on, I think was one of the issues. I mean, you look at some of those, games to end the season against like Ferris and Grand Valley, and they started giving up 60 spots and stuff. And that's where you start to see some of the numbers get a little bit skewed. So again, I mean, only having 3 guys back on D kind of hurts. I mean, Carl Ware's back. He's their leading tackler. So, I mean, at least they've got somebody with some experience to kind of anchor things. But yeah, you're right, man. That schedule's brutal.
That kind of caught my eye. I was like, okay.
Yeah. 4 of the last 6 are at home. I guess maybe that helps them a little bit, but
let's moving outside of the green colors. We're going to move ahead to Michigan Tech, the Huskies, and as we take a look at them, I got a glimpse of them last year. I think they handled Minot State out of my league, if my memory serves me right, in pretty one-sided fashion.
Yeah, they did. That was late in the season.
That they, I thought there was times where, they were hanging around with Ferris, in a way where it made me think, okay, this squad may have more to it than I originally thought. They finished 1-5 in league, which is surprising for me to see.
Yeah.
Honestly, because I personally felt they were a better club than that, and they return 8 guys on each side of the ball. How do you see it?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. This is one of the teams that I'm kind of intrigued to see how the season's going to go for them. And I mean, if you understand anything about Tech and have covered them and watched them as long as I have watching this league, I mean, there's one thing that they're always known for is that they are a team that's going to play disciplined football. They are going to out-execute you every chance they get. They're going to make very few mistakes. They're almost perennially the least penalized team in the league. And that's how they get you, because typically they just don't have as much depth as a lot of the other teams in the league. I mean, it's just not everybody wants to be an engineer, and that's what the Tech school. It's a fantastic school, and I know people that go there, and they love it. But it's not everybody wants to go to Houghton, and it's I mean, you look at the job that Dan Metlack's going to be charged with in recruiting. It's his alma mater, so there are probably few people out there who can sell it any more effectively than he. But it's not for everybody. And so, he does a great job, and they always have of having a good front line. And sometimes that depth can be a challenge. When you look at this year, their front line might be a little bit deeper than it is in a lot of years, just with how many guys come back. But gosh, when you look at that offense, Alex Freeze in his first year as the full-time starter last year kind of came along and progressed as the season went along. But when you look at what he's got on the outside, I mean, there aren't a lot of schools anywhere in the country that can boast, a Darius Willis, Ethan Champney, Brandon Michalak kind of combo on the outside. All three of those guys are really dangerous, and you've seen their names pop up on GLIAC Player of the Week awards at different points over the last 2-3 years, because they're all capable of burning you for 10 catches and a $189 and 3 scores, and you've seen every one of them put up a line like that. So on the outside,
I'll do you one better, Tony.
They can do it.
You're going to see Ethan Champney on my fantasy football team.
Oh, outstanding!
So I mean, not to give him all kinds of love, but he's going to be in my lineup this week. If he doesn't perform well, we might need to have a conversation about that next week. But
okay, well, what I will tell you is while I think the case could be made that Willis might be the most explosive of the three, Champney and Freeze played in high school together, so their simpatico is long established, and so there are times where that's Freeze's go-to guy because he's been throwing to him for his whole friggin' life. So you might have stolen yourself a late round gem there in your draft by picking up Mr. Champney.
Well, at Bemidji State might not be the easiest place, but you know what? We'll see how that goes, and obviously talk about those games a little bit more as we continue. But Saginaw Valley State is next. They and Davenport both have been kind of knocking at the door. We sometimes think, okay, they can get their foot in the door and get themselves in that Grand Valley and Ferris conversation. It's not quite at this moment, but Ryan Brady's doing a nice job with this squad. Defensively, 23 a game, which if I'm not mistaken, they've also got a new coordinator there, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
But from Northwest, maybe. But anyway, so as we're looking at this, they bring back 8 starters on the offensive side, 7 on the defensive side. How do you see them looking this year?
Well, the defense is going to probably be ahead of the offense, at least in the early going, right, Whit? I mean,
sure.
Micah Kretzinger, you've got Daly, you've got Rawls. I mean, that might be one of the best linebacking cores anywhere in the country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are 3 or 5 top 4 tacklers from last year, and those guys are awesome. And obviously, we've got Micah Kretzinger in there in the picture. Just for he's good. He had four interception returns for touchdowns last year. That's a stat that most people can't boast at any point in their life, let alone
no kidding.
At a high level of Division II college football. But he's also one of our Elite 100 watch list guys for this year. So, when you look at the middle of that defense, it's going to be real hard to think that they aren't going to be better prepared to be able to keep teams kind of slowed down in the early going while they figure things out on offense.
Yeah.
And the only reason they got to figure things out on offense is just because they don't have a returning quarterback to really lean on. They do have Terrence Brown in the backfield, who was the GLIAC Freshman of the Year last year. So they feel like the run game's in pretty good shape. Eric Crack and Aaron Folks, 2 of the top 3 receivers from last year are back as well. So they've got guys on the outside that can stretch things. It's just going to be, what are we going to do at quarterback? And so it sounds like as camp is progressing that it's a pair of redshirt freshmen that are going to be battling it out for the job. It's Mason McKenzie, who was from over here in the West Michigan area, and Nick Patterson out of Indiana. Those are the 2 guys that they think are going to be, handling the snaps, and it may well be both of them. I mean, we see so much of the 2 quarterback stuff going on in the league these days.
Yeah,
and there's a pretty good chance that we may see that here. But until those guys are able to get acclimated and figure things out, Mr. Kretzinger might be called on to kind of carry the load for the team, at least in the early going. So, and they've proven that they can handle Winona. They did that last year. So going out to see the Warriors might be a little bit trickier than handling them at home. But they still got to play Indianapolis in the non-con.
Right.
So it's a tough slate. And they've only got 4 home games this year, too. That's one of the things that Coach Brady kind of talked about, is how much he loves being on the road with his team. But he better love it a hell of a lot, because they're going to be gone all the time.
No kidding. Let's go ahead and move up to Davenport next. Sparky last year, 5-2 in conference, 8-2 overall. Defense played well. Important stat, more than 50 transfers on the roster. You know what? They've kind of been, if I'm going to look at Valdosta in the Southeast as a team who's really kind of embraced and thrived with the portal,
Yeah.
and UTPB down south. Would you say that if we're going to refer to a team up north, maybe Davenport's a little bit of that with regard to how they go ahead and find some guys?
Yeah, I think so. And there's part of that where as a private school, sometimes you got a little more flexibility than maybe other schools can have. But also I think Sparky's figured out that, hey, asking kids to come to Grand Rapids is not that tough. It's not the biggest of cities, but it's not in the middle of nowhere. And there's a lot to do in West Michigan, and you've got the beaches and everything else. And so, I mean,
Good
once
place to
kids
live.
get up here, they start to realize, geez, this isn't so bad, and I can get to play at a high level, and they know that they're going to be playing, two of the best teams in the country every year because they're in conference, and you're getting the chance to play for a league title and a playoff berth. So you got to give Coach McEwen a credit for figuring out how on a program that's only like 9 years old.
Right.
I mean, short of what West Florida was doing with Coach Shinnick, I mean, Coach McEwen's figuring out how to get the kids he needs to be able to win a lot of ball games. And, that, like anything, that winning is always going to attract kids as well. So for as much as – go ahead.
Yeah, let me ask, when I take a hard look at him, and you know this club much better than I do, but, Jason Whitaker's been a productive quarterback for him last few seasons.
Yep.
But they bring back, some skill players, running back and receiver and things like that. As long as they get some solid quarterback play, this team should be right here again, shouldn't they?
Yeah, you nailed it. So I got Myron Harris on the picture there because he was really good at Wayne State, and he was really good last year at Davenport. And he's got one more go around along with Khalif Jenkins. They're one of the few teams that's actually got a kind of a thunder and lightning 1-2 punch in the backfield in the league. And they use it, and they use it a lot. And then Preston Smith's been all GLIAC the last 2 years on the outside. He's back. So whoever plays quarterback for them is going to have weapons around them, both in the run and in the pass game. I think going into the season, from what Coach McEwen has alluded to the fact that he thinks he's got 3 guys that can play, and he may use all of them. Micah Horo had a lot of snaps at Saginaw Valley last year, and he had a grad transfer year, so he's on the roster at Davenport. I think Coach McEwen likes him quite a bit. And then DeJuan Mathis was a highly touted recruit coming out of high school, and I was actually at Georgia for a time, and he's on the roster now too. And so I think with those 2 guys are probably the leaders in the clubhouse to be able to get the majority of the snaps of those 3 quarterbacks. But again, how well they get the ball to the outside and how much they maybe get relied upon to use their legs a little bit to augment the run game, going to be really interesting to watch. And the early schedule for Davenport isn't super easy, so these guys are going to have to figure their stuff out pretty quick.
Let me ask, for your own order of finish, let's say, I'm going to take a wild guess. Most people are probably going to have Grand Valley and Ferris 1-2 in some form or fashion. Do you think Davenport's correct? Do the coaches have them right at the 3 spot? Or do you think there's a chance that maybe Saginaw ends up being a tad better?
You got to give Davenport their flowers a little bit for going 8-0 to start the season each of the last 2 years,
right?
And being 4-0 in GLIAC play going into the last 2 weeks of the season each of the last 2 years. I mean, so on the last day of the season, each of the last 2 seasons, they've been playing for a share of the GLIAC title. So for them to have finished third each of those 2 years and be touted for third this year, I don't think there's anything out of alignment with that. Now, could a Saginaw Valley or a Michigan Tech sneak up there and spoil that party? Certainly. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot still to be seen. And I mean, part of that's going to depend on how well Davenport stays in that sub 20 point per game allowed category like they did last year. I mean, and they've got guys to do it. I mean, Austin Allward's one of the, for all the transfers that they have, Austin Allward's a guy who's been in that program since day one, and he's awesome at the end. And we got Jamonte Peck shown there, who's one of our Elite 100s, one of the guys that you like. So, I mean, up front, they've got a pretty good defense, and they're physical, and they're one of the more elite teams defensively in the country. I mean, the list is somewhat short every year. Teams that hold opponents under 100 yards rushing, and Davenport was on that list last year.
Very true. Very true. Next up, with once again a change of colors, we've got a team that you know a little bit about, Grand Valley State. Coach Wooster only came on in league and as the head coach of the Lakers and went 6-0 in his first year in conference play. 43 points a game, 16 allowed. That's a nice differential. Not a whole lot of clubs in Division Two with that kind of number. Bringing back a lot of starters on both offense and defense. You're taking a look at a quarterback leaving, a running back leaving. I'm assuming most people are going to look at the offensive side of the football and think, okay, are they going to be as good as they have been? What's kind of your thoughts to that?
Well, and that's, I think, maybe another one of the key levers that, when you were asking me earlier about, hey, Grand Valley beat Ferris twice last year. How's Ferris ahead of them in the polls? Well, okay. There are question marks on the offense for Grand Valley. Now, do they have most of their offensive line back? Sure do. The vast majority of their receiving yardage is back? 100%. But they lose Tariq Reed, who was all GLIAC a couple of times at running back for the Lakers. And then, of course, Cade Peterson was the GLIAC player of the year last year and a multi-year starter at quarterback. And that's kind of tough to replace. And so I wonder if maybe the questions about the quarterback position might be a little bit of what are driving some of the folks' thoughts there. And in addition to that, they swapped out an OC this year, too. So there is enough change there where maybe some people are looking at it going, geez, we just don't know what to expect. Now, within the program, I think, Avery Moore took a lot of snaps last year, and they actually had packages for him specifically. So it's not like he hasn't played at all. And he's played in big games for them, too, and done key things at key moments. So he's not completely unfamiliar with what they're going to be asking of him. The Lakers also brought in a transfer, an Ike Udengwu from Eastern Michigan, who they like quite a bit. And we saw them go more to the two quarterback last year, with Avery being that kind of second spell guy. And I think those two, at least at this point, look like they might be the front two that get a lot of the snaps early in the season and bring that Laker offense along. Now, any question marks that you've got there? Defensively, there's a lot of belief that this defensive unit's going to be really good, which obviously they kind of proved that last year. And losing Christian McCarroll and Abe Swanson is no small thing. But when you look at who's coming back, guys like Anthony Cardamone, who's on our Elite 100 list now, King is as well, Devin Pringle is as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot that they're excited about on the defensive side of the ball there. So even if in the early going they feel like they've got some things to work out kinks-wise on offense, they feel like the defense is definitely going to hold things up for them.
I got a chance to watch offensive coordinator Ian, Schumacher go ahead at St. Cloud State and do his thing with Philip Klophocky, a quarterback who was an All-American.
Yeah, you and I talked about that in the offseason.
Yeah, 2012, 2013. And, I'll tell you, they had a game in 13 where Mankato was undefeated. And they went into Mankato and they kind of bombed it over them and every which way, and put up a 50 burger on them at Mankato, which doesn't happen a whole lot.
Mankato doesn't give up anything to anybody, typically.
Yeah, he was kind of the mastermind of that. And, he's been at Hawaii. He's been at a few other stops, Eastern Washington, and so forth. And he's got a lot of experience. I got a feeling that Lakers fans are going to like what they see with that offense. And I think they can really be multiple with some of the guys they have at quarterback in the way that they're going to make people defend as a runner as well. I said it on our show, Tony, I think this could very well be the most talented roster in Division II football right here, which is why I liked him as much as I did. And I know, you and I both picked him to come away with the national title. And, we had a variety of answers, but I think a lot of that speaks to, the defense. You can always count on it.
Yeah.
And, this Super Region 3 is going to be a thing, but you know what? They're going to be battle tested. Games with at Pueblo, West Florida. They're going to have a chance to really face the fire a few times, and not to mention Ferris, and they should be prepared.
Yeah, for sure. And, even one of their other non-conference games, which, Grand Valley always likes their home games. And so they scheduled Division III, Wisconsin lacrosse, which,
Right.
you think a D3 school, but as you know, some of those top flight schools in the Wisconsin league are pretty damn tough. So,
Yes.
we've got teams in this league this year playing Whitewater and playing lacrosse. I think Northern's playing lacrosse as well. And in fact, I want to say lacrosse beat Wayne a couple of years ago. So I mean, that's a playoff team in Division III, and they're not scared to go and play anybody.
Yeah, I think lacrosse is actually playing a GLIAC schedule this year from what we've seen so far. But
Could be.
let's go ahead and move to who the coaches have number one, and kind of flip a coin on that with Grand Valley, Ferris State, the Bulldogs, and Coach Anise. They end up with 3 losses last year, Tony. Two of them to Grand Valley, one of them in a game they frankly should have won at Montana. I
Yeah.
mean, division, FCS runner-up nationally. Uh, this club has not taken some big step back by going 8-3. And I think there's some people who may kind of have them not on the front burner, maybe more on the back burner nationally. And don't sleep on that. So when you look at their numbers, defensive points per game, that kind of jumps out a little bit for us, at 17. And then they're bringing back a lot of guys on both sides of the football, 8 starters on each side. Pitt State, of course, is the opener in Ashland. We think is got the potential to be a bounce back team here.
Yep.
How do you see no more Malik Mitchell? Been a long time there. How do you see this Ferris team compared to maybe where we left off with them?
Um, well, I'm going to just kind of tag along to what you say. Anybody who's going to put back burner these guys does that does so at their own peril. This team's loaded, Wit. I mean, and that's part of why you see 2 GLIAC teams in the top 5 is because both those teams are loaded. For me, when I look at, I think one of the great Chuck Martin always espoused the notion that the toughest position group to recruit in Division II is defensive line, and there aren't a lot of schools out there that do it better than Ferris State does. I mean, you look at the guys that they've lost over the last 3-4 years, the Caleb Murphys, the Larry Oladipos, the Ian Halls, and yet you look at who they got this year. I mean, Victor Nelson's back, Duron Irving Bay's back, Sheldon
Right.
Cage's back, and you're just like, holy crap, how's anybody going to run the ball? How's anybody gonna be able to stand in the pocket long enough to let patterns develop? I mean, and so that's part of what separates teams like Grand Valley and Ferris from the rest of the country and the rest of the league is their ability to get guys up front on defense that can really control the middle. On top of that, Ferris is actually getting guys back that they didn't have last year. Connor Neer, played at Oklahoma for a year and decided to come back down and play his last year back at his original school, Ferris State. So the linebacking core gets shored up a little bit there. And then Jacarvis Alexander missed last year. He's one of the better defenders on the back end in the GLIAC, and now they got him back there. And Justin Payut's a proven commodity back there. I mean, so they got dudes, at all levels of that defense. And so, that's 17.9 that you see. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of deviation from that as the season goes on.
Now, offensively, obviously Carson Gulker, you would think is going to be getting, let's say 70% of the reps in gameplay. Mr. Chambliss is going to come on in and offer a little bit more, maybe of that speed guy with the run, but also a passer. I know Tony sees the quarterback position no different than the running back or the receiver or any other guy. It's kind of like you're our starter, but the other guy's going to get reps, and if we're going to have you run it, and if you get dinged up, the next guy's in. And he really seems to kind of adopt that philosophy. Gulker, certainly can be just a bull, and the offensive line getting better year over year, more experience. Do you think that this is a team that's going to try and do a little bit of that bully ball? Or do you think that they're still going to go ahead and really spread things out end to end? Anything from speed option to being able to take some shots downfield?
Well, I think they could do any or all of it. And so when you got guys like Bryce George, like we've got pictured there, who, anchor your offensive line and then are on our Elite 100 list, you're always pretty confident that you can pass pro when you need to, and you can run block when you need to. You can road great. The one thing that I might challenge that you said is that, hey, Gulker's going to get 70% of the snaps. I don't know that it's necessarily any predisposition like that for
Sure.
Coach Anise and his staff. I really think that they like to do more of, okay, let's put the guy in there that gives us the best chance to move the ball, whether it's situationally or game plan wise, opponent wise, whatever the factors are that they want to consider. They're going to try and optimize every series based on what those factors are that they're seeing. Sometimes it's even they'll make adjustments on it mid-game. So we saw Gulker get starts last year, even though, Malik Mitchell was kind of presumed to be the starter, so to speak. We saw plenty of games. Now, that could have been partially due to Mitchell being hurt in certain instances.
Right. The foot thing and all that. Right.
Yeah. But I mean, there were also instances, too, where I think, the coaching staff looked at this and said, hey, we're just going to run the hell out of the ball. So let's have Carson take care of most of that work for us, and we'll get that done. So, part of it's just going to, again, be dependent upon what the game plan is. So that both those guys can move the ball, via the ground. How they're going to augment that ground attack from the backfield, I think they feel a little bit better about it than they did last year. Really since they were using Marcus Taylor a couple of years ago, we kind of felt like they've maybe lacked a true identity in that running back position. They got a couple of guys that they think can maybe dispel that this year. But at the end of the day, you're still going to see the Cam Underwoods, the Tyrese Hunt Thompsons, the Brady Roses, those guys that, just will burn you in space. They're still going to be leveraged significantly, both in the pass game, and you'll see those guys in fly action getting carries in the run as well. So even if that running back group doesn't come together maybe the way that they would want, they're still going to run the ball, and they're going to find all kinds of ways to burn you with it.
Yeah, I was kind of figuring with a guy like, Hunt Thompson, maybe they're going to try and figure out all kinds of ways to get him the football, whether it's in jet action, all kinds of other stuff, because I think that they feel like he's now maybe the number one weapon at the skill positions for them, don't you?
Could be, and obviously we put him on the Elite 100 for a reason. So I mean,
Sure.
it's you're probably sniffing the right trail there, my friend.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look at, we've kind of previewed the teams, and now we're going to take a look at our week 0 schedule. It's kind of nice to have this. I mean, we've got all across our D2 landscape some interesting football games that result from it. Certainly the biggest one on the whole slate, it can be seen on this page.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead, though, and kind of work top to bottom. We've got, in our opener, we've got Duluth going to Northern Michigan. How do you see that game playing out? Do you think Northern Michigan's in a spot where they can maybe pull an upset here, or do you think maybe they're not quite ready for that yet?
Boy, I guess we're going to learn real quick. But,
Yes.
Based on the fact that this is a return trip for Duluth, I mean, these two played last year. So, I tend to think that Duluth is probably going to be the favorite here, and that's who I would pick. I'd love to see Northern, keep this game to where they got a chance to win as they get into the fourth quarter. I think, keeping a game tight like that and showing the country that, hey, we got a nationally ranked team in here and we're giving them all they want. We're not going to be a pushover like we were last year. I think that'd be a great outcome for them.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see. We talked about on my Northern Sun side where Kyle Waljasper, the quarterback for Duluth, had shoulder surgery in the offseason. Should be ready to go, but if he's not playing bumper cars like he has been in the past, trying to run guys over, I mean, he's Carson Gulker, just in a little bit different way. I mean, he looks like a middle linebacker carrying the football. But Duluth is going to bring back, a fair amount otherwise. There's a reason that they were picked by the coaches to finish tops in the league.
For sure.
So, I mean, it's certainly a tough one there. How about Michigan Tech at Bemidji State. Not terribly long travel. What is that? About 4 or 5 hours, maybe?
It seems like I looked that up, and I'm trying to remember what it was. I don't. It's less. It's fewer than 6, I believe.
Fair enough. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
manageable travel
manageable.
for Tech here.
It's shorter. It's shorter than for Tech to come down to any of the lower peninsula schools that they have to play.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure, for sure. I know that
This,
much.
this is what we call a gas tank game because you
Yeah,
can make it there on a tank of gas.
there you go.
Um, now we talked about the fact that Tech's, we think that they've got a pretty nice upside right now. They've got some receivers. They're bringing back 8 starters on both sides of the football. Can they go ahead and take Bemidji into some deep waters here? See what I did there? Near Lake Bemidji there. How do you see this one playing out?
I caught it, and that's part of why Beaver Stadium is on my bucket list of places that I've always wanted to go. Is it called Beaver Stadium? I called it that, and I don't even know if it is.
Yeah, they call it the Chet, but you know what? I'm going to let it go.
Is it Chet? Yeah, okay. Chet, is it Chet Brown or somebody like that?
Yeah, now that's going to be the question for next week. That'll be answered in the comments.
Okay, I'm sure. Yeah, we'll be disparaged for our lack of intimate knowledge. This is a game where I think Bemidji's favored, right? They were a playoff team last year. Sure. I don't think there's a lot to argue there.
Massey has them as a 2-touchdown favorite. Do you think Massey's got it right, or do you think Michigan Tech gets a little closer than that?
I'd like to think Tech could go in there and cover that.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Now, Bemidji State, for GLIAC folks, has had this guy, Brandon Alt, who's been a gunslinger for him for the last 14 seasons.
Boy,
no, I'm just joking. It's only been like 7. So he's graduated. He's actually playing in one of the arena leagues, actually, and was lighting it up. So Bemidji actually has a guy who was a Wildcat quarterback for him because he ran the ball real well each of the last few years. And they're going to be going ahead and rolling him out as their starter. They bring back a whole bunch of their offensive line and defensive lines. They should be the best team in the Northern Sun at the line of scrimmage.
Okay.
So that's going to be kind of their deal there. They got 3 guys on our Elite 100 team, 2 defensive linemen, and the center, who might be as good as any center in D2. I think that they are going to try and pound the football. They lost a little bit of weaponry in the receiver spot. I don't think they're going to try and go over the top like you saw with Alt in the past.
Okay.
I think Bemidji's going to try and play northern physical type football. I don't know if they cover because I don't think that they're going to be the same kind of explosive team they have been. So I think Michigan Tech covers as well. I think I'm going to go there.
Yeah, and if Bemidji is going to try and be more physical and more point of attack with it, that may lend itself to where the strength of Tech's defense is. I mean, they lost Sam Kinney from last year, but other than that, most of the starters are back up front. And you got Mark Sipple, who tackles everything under the sun. He's got like 230 or 220 some odd tackles over the last 2 seasons. So, you get him and Josh Cribben patrolling things there in the middle, and it's like, geez, oh Pete's. I mean, those guys could rack up a ton of tackles, and next thing you know, Bemidji's going to have to throw it. So
sure.
Yeah, I'm liking this. I'm liking this more and more as we go.
Now, the final game on the slate here, Ferris State makes the trip to the jungle, into the jungle for Pitt State. I'm going to be at that game. My guy Chuck and I are going to be at
happening, man. It's so cool.
So it's going to be part of our weekend doubleheader with Northwest Missouri State hosting Mankato in our first game on Thursday. But let's you and I go ahead and kind of do a little tail of the tape with this one. Now, when we have matchups of this magnitude where we have, 2 top 5, top 10 teams, we're probably going to take a better look at this. And when I break down what we have here, you have Pitt State, 11-2, playing in one of the top conferences in the country, the MIAA. Ferris State 8-3. We mentioned both of those losses to Grand Valley, the other one to Montana. When I look at this one, I see a little bit of Ferris State's offense could very well kind of be the difference here. I'm not sure if Pitt State is going to have enough offense to win this football game against a squad like Ferris State, who has that good a defense. What are some of the things that you have as kind of takeaways as you look at this matchup?
Yeah, I think for me, and the funny thing is I got a pretty good close-up look at Pitt State
Mhm.
last year when they played at Grand Valley. I actually did TV for that game. And the one thing I think I found the most impressive was Chad Donson Jr.'s accuracy when he had to throw the ball downfield.
Mm.
And I don't know that Grand Valley was necessarily expecting them to do that as much as they did. And even though the conditions weren't super favorable, he was still dropping dimes, and he had tight ends that he was hitting.
Yep.
And for a while there, Grand Valley didn't have much of an answer for it. Now, there were a couple of Dodson mistakes as the game progressed that wound up being the difference. But
Yep.
if he has a good game, this game actually can be highly competitive, and I think Pittsburg State can win it. But I think that's the biggest caveat here, because I'm with you. I just think that I just don't know if Pitt State, other than Central Missouri, I don't think they see speed like what Ferris is going to put on the field
I think a big
week in and
factor
week
here,
out.
Tony, I think a real big factor here is Ferris State is used to playing
Yep,
Grand Valley every year.
yep,
That's a really tough
twice.
environment.
Yep.
And they played at Montana last year. And I don't think Tony is going to allow some of the shortcomings they had with being able to go ahead and get their plays off properly and all of the noise that they had in Montana. I think that they probably have worked on a few things to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen again. And they are used to the big stage, Tony. That's the thing for me. I don't think they're going to be shook going into the jungle.
Well, and I think there are kind of two sides to that coin. So first and foremost, no, they won't be shook, and I think that's the more important side, because even if the noise does cause them problems and disrupt things, it's not going to ruin their day. If does that make sense? Because like I've been to games where Ferris has had visible problems, and I've seen it in a couple of different stadiums where if there's enough noise, it disrupts what they're trying to do in terms of how they get stuff set and called, and often getting the ball snapped. And yet, every time I've seen them struggle with that game in particular, they don't lose. So that's the thing, is even if the jungle's going bananas and they have a couple procedural penalties, which they will, there's a certain risk reward or risk tolerance that Ferris employs. That doesn't mean they're going to lose. They're still going to find ways to overcome it, and that's just part of who they are. That's how they do that.
I think also, Pitt State, brand new head coach.
Yeah, it's a
I mean,
lot
he
to
had been
ask in a
there.
first game. Oh
I
boy.
mean, you talk about that. That's a real tough one. So,
Yeah.
um, I'm going to go out and pick a score on this one, Tony. I'll give you a second to kind of think about where you want to go with it. Since this is such a big matchup, let's be real frank. This feels like a playoff game to start the year.
Oh, no question
And
about it.
not just a playoff game. Like this feels like a semifinal or something. So I'm gonna have Ferris getting up early and Pitt State staying close enough, but Pitt State not having quite enough offense in the end. That's my take. I got Ferris 30-17 in this one.
Yeah, I think I like something more along the lines of like a 30-21.
Okay.
Maybe 20, maybe 28-20. But I'm with you. This really, I mean, actually, if you really just stop and think about it, in certain regards, this kind of is a playoff game.
Yes.
Because both of these teams are still gonna, Pitt State's gonna have to play Central Missouri and whatever Northwest is gonna end up being this year.
Mm-hmm.
Ferris is still gonna have to play Grand Valley, and I've got a game at the end of the season that I've already got circled that I'm probably going to attend, where Ferris plays Saginaw Valley, and Saginaw Valley gives Ferris fits. So does Ashland. I mean, so Ferris has still got games on its schedule that it's got to go out and handle. And so either one of these teams starting the season 0-1, yeah, their strength of schedule is going to help buoy them here. But I mean, if they lose a rivalry game to anybody else throughout the rest of the season, 2 losses in this region, we all know where that puts you. It's in a spot you don't want to be.
Yeah, you have to make it. You have to all of a sudden make a case for yourself come
Yeah,
the end of the year. So
for sure. And these are two teams that aren't used to being in that kind of a position.
well, that's everything we've got for you guys for our first edition of GLIAC Weekly. A little bit of a season preview along with some of the Week 0 games. We will be here each week to go ahead and cover the league. We'll go ahead and talk a little bit about winners and losers from this coming weekend while previewing the action each week. So Tony, I appreciate you making time for this, and I think our viewers are going to appreciate the fact that we've got this.
Oh, I hope so. It's a lot of fun doing it this way, and to have you and Chuck and Coach Poe and whoever else wants to come along and kind of co-host. That's to have that support from the staff and the team is I'm grateful for it, because it makes my ability to give the fans what they're hoping for that much easier and that much more fun. So it's a gas all the way around.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everybody, and have fun in Week 0, and we'll see you at the games.